Cuba's growing ties with other nations. I spoke with William Leo Grande, a professor at American University here in Washington. He's co-author of a book called Back Channel to Cuba. He shared his thoughts on business interests on the island.
Well, for a long time, the regulations around direct foreign investment in Cuba were not very attractive, and so it wasn't a great business climate. And a number of people who went in there to do business got tired of fighting with the Cuban bureaucracy and pulled out. But they passed a new foreign direct investment law last year, and the conditions now are much more similar to surrounding countries in the Caribbean. So the Cubans are hoping that this will attract more investment, and I think some of the French enterprises that already have established relations in Cuba will now be able to expand in a way that's profitable for them.
How does it impact the rest of Latin America now that it could be a game changer in some respects, couldn't it? I mean, tilting things around somewhat.
Well, one of the reasons that President Obama made the change in U.S. policy that he did was pressure from Latin America. The Latin American countries had been demanding Cuba's reintegration into the inter-American community for several years and had been pushing Obama to keep the promise he made in 2009 at the 5th Summit of the Americas when he said he wanted a new beginning with Cuba, that he was going to get rid of the old policy of the past. He hadn't really done it for the first 6 years of his presidency. And with the 7th summit coming up in Panama, held just this last April, the president was under a lot of pressure to finally make a break in the relationship with Cuba, and he did it.
There's been kind of fast-paced economic growth in places like Brazil, Chile, Mexico. And some analysts are saying, well, you know, if you want to find some low-wage earners, then maybe perhaps Cuba's the place. How do you see that factoring in?
I don't think that Cuba is going to be attractive from a wage point of view. And the reason is that right now an investor has to hire labor through the Cuban government at what amount to international market rates. It's true that the Cuban workers are heavily taxed by the government, and so they're getting relatively low wages. But what the prices being charged to the investor are still pretty high. And in fact, previously, that was one of the reasons that some foreign investors didn't go to Cuba.
What about Venezuela? Venezuela and Cuba have this relationship kind of based on oil. With the opening up with the United States, how does it impact that relationship?
Well, Cuba still depends very heavily on oil from Venezuela. About a third of its total consumption comes from Venezuela. And that's not going to change anytime soon. The Cubans are trying to do some offshore deep water exploration, but so far that hasn't really produced any marketable, economically marketable oil. So that relationship is going to continue. The Cubans are in a bit of a difficult situation because of the current strain between Venezuela and the United States. And the Cubans would not want to have to choose between Venezuela, an important ideological as well as economic partner, and the United States. They'd like to have good relations with both. We'll see if that's possible going forward.